Everybody in the pet industry thinks they're a disruptor. And in an industry when we're seeing a lot more clever marketing than true innovation, it can be hard to weed out the posers from the true innovators. Clayton Payne, on the other hand, has lived and breathed pet industry disruption for more than 20 years. He's the kind of person who will happily spend his weekend running a booth at a local dog show just to stay close to the real consumers, you and your pets. As the host of one of the world's most downloaded pet industry podcasts, a longtime consultant, distributor, and serial disruptor, Clayton attended SUPERZOO 2025 to see what all the buzz was about. We brought him into our soundproof podcasting booth right there on the show floor to pick his brain about what it really means to disrupt an industry, which products pet owners are more likely to trust and why, and how pet owners can cut through overwhelming labels, buzzwords, and trends to find products that actually work for them and their pets. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to Barking Mad, a podcast by BSM Partners. I'm your host, Jordan Tyler.
Okay, so my name's Clayton Payne. I'm the host of the Pet Business Disruptors podcast, which is the most downloaded pet industry podcast in the world. I also spend a lot of my time bringing UK and EU brands to market in the US and vice versa. I'm also heavily involved in insect agriculture, like in the future of sustainable protein. But I've been in the industry my whole life. So I grew up in a pet store. I ran a distributor for more than 20 years. I've worked as a consultant working with some of the biggest brands in Europe. Yeah. And here at SUPERZOO to just get some UK brands, some coverage and get people interested and hyped around innovation.
Very cool. Well, we're glad you're here, and thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, no, sure.
I think it's funny, some of the most interesting people in the pet industry, I think, are people that started off stocking shelves at retail or running samples in a plant. And so when you have that deep boots on the ground experience and then you grow into the industry as it evolves, I think it's a really interesting perspective.
And actually, to be honest, one thing I do purposely is I still do retail shows. So I work with some of the brands I work with. I'll say to them, if you're doing a retail show at the weekend and I'm not doing nothing, I'll come run the booth. Just because I want to speak to the end user all the time, because I think it's very easy to get put in an ivory tower and then get echo chambered with a lot of people who are just there to agree with each other, and then you just bring out garbage over and over again. And really what I'm interested in is, what do people really want? What does the average man on the street want? What do people talking about? I go to everything from the dog shows to holistic conferences to retail festivals and that sort of stuff. And, understanding how the consumer mentality works is as important as actually understanding how to bring a product to market, bring it, package it, send it, distribute it, etc. So I try and keep myself relevant. And I think that's probably why I've survived so long.
I like that you bring up not getting into an echo chamber and keeping the end consumer and the consumer trends in mind all the time. You really do have to tap into different kinds of events and different types of communities to be able to do that. Because if you just go to industry trade shows, you can just get, kind of inundated with, this is just how it's done. And I think it might create a stagnation in innovation, perhaps.
Well, I think the problem is a lot of people base stuff purely off data. And I think if you do that, you're always behind the curve, because when you look at how the industry moves, if we're doing today what we were doing 5 years ago, we're not relevant anymore. And and you can sort of throw that back 30 years. I can obviously remember what was happening 30 years ago. And if you were still doing that stuff today, you're ludicrous, And so I always say you've got to be in business, you've got to be like a shark. You got to keep swimming forward, because if you don't, you're going to drown. And so actually being on that cutting edge is really important. I think it's hard for some of the big companies to do, because they're very big buses to turn. They need a lot of meetings to get things done. And for me, that's why I kind of like being flexible and on the ground, and being able to pivot quickly and hear what's going on, put two and two together, say, okay, this would work. Let's just bring this to market. Let's do this in a low risk, fast and furious sort of fashion. So that's kind of why obviously my podcast is called Pet Business Disruptors, because I've always been that disrupting factor, bringing something out new, faster and more efficiently than, let's say, the big guys do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, we see that all the time in the US. I'm sure that's just kind of like a ubiquitous thing with large companies in any industry, really.
Yeah, for sure. And also, again, it's very easy to be that guy who's, let's say, you know, a VP of something or a president of something, and you just become so divorced from actually what's on the ground, you know. And I love talking to people, and I'm obviously an obsessive pet person myself. I have 5 dogs and pet emus and God knows what else, and you know, I'm obsessed with like trying things all the time and saying, you know, looking at what's and how could I tweak this to make this more appealing? How could I take a functional treat and make it part of somebody's daily routine, as opposed to a product which nobody quite knows when to use? Do you know what I mean? So I'm very much into that side of it. It's about building like mentalities amongst people. If I'm going to do this, this needs to fit into my daily routine, and how do I do that? Because there's a lot of products out there which are almost great, but there's just something missing, and they just, you know, this happens all the time. So again, it's about just getting consumer feedback, about getting retailer feedback, and like I say, look, I was lucky. You know, I ran a distributor for 20 odd years, but I was very much involved with my customer base. So, you know, and I still talk to them regularly and say, you know, what's doing well for you? Why isn't this selling? Like, if you did it like this, would it sell better? Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. And I'm lucky enough that I'm friendly with enough people that I can just sit down and have these conversations continuously, you know?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the pet industry and just like pet ownership in general, it's very relational. It's very emotional. People are super passionate about it. It's, you know, kind of about community too. And so you almost have to approach like market research and the way that you develop products that way too. Like, you can't leave out the relational aspect of it. Like, just go into a store and talk to people.
Everything is about community. Everything is like, everyone wants to feel part of a tribe, and everybody wants to talk to people who are authentic. I mean, if you look at, you know, we're in the era of personal brand now, and like, you know, if you look at, let's say, Instagram followings on Elon Musk compared to Tesla, or Richard Branson compared to Virgin, or, you know, people want to connect with the people who are behind the brands, and they want to like feel part of that person's community. Do I like this person? Do I vibe with their ethics? And I think it's very important for brands to become community people, and again, put themselves out there, not just as the brand, but also as the people behind the brand. Let people really understand who you are, because it's harder to turn away from a person you really like than the brand you like. And do you know what? How many times have you actually, you know, seen a brand, you really like the brand, and then you've met the people behind the brand, and you've gone, I actually really don't like this person, and now I absolutely hate this brand. And it's not even the product anymore. Do you know what I mean? So I think like that relationship building is so important. And look, people want this information. They want the nuance. They want to know who these people are, so that when they listen to them, they go, yeah, do you know what? I love the products, but also this person like really vibes with how I feel about things, you know? So putting yourself out there and actually letting people know who you are is really important.
100%, yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about, you know, you've been in the industry obviously for a long time, and you've probably seen a lot of like trends come and go. And I'm curious on your perspective, kind of what you've seen and what you think like comes top of mind as like some of the landmarks along how the pet industry has evolved since you've been a part of it.
So I think it's funny because, like, I mean, if we look at the pet industry over the time I've been in, so I grew up working in a pet store in the 1980s, which makes me sound old now at this point. And look, we were very much into whole foods in those days. So it was about frozen meat for dogs and biscuits and this sort of stuff. And then we sort of had the kibble revolution, where in the US, all of these companies started bringing out these kibble-based products and really dominated the market for a long time. And I feel like now that we're in the social media age, people are actually able to go out and actually say, right, do you know what? We want more for our pets. And we're just seeing that enormous move back towards whole foods. And again, like, it's easier to get messaging out in a way. Like, if you can get enough people behind you, enough people shouting your cause. And I think that's what we're seeing. And so I think there's been some quite telling movements in the market. But then also, look, there's also the humanization aspect. I actually hate talking about humanization of animals, but if we just look at the, let's say the cat market, for example, I mean, we know about the humanization of the dog market, that this has been going on for a long time, but we're seeing it in the cat market too. So in the UK, the stats are is 10 years ago, 15% of cats were indoor cats. Today, it's more than 30%. We're seeing Gen Zs and millennials becoming indoor cat owners, and with that's coming, like, we're looking for a whole food cat, high meat content cat food. We're looking for supplements. We're looking for like dental products. We're looking for things that actually really enhance our cat's life rather than they just go out, crap in your next door neighbour's garden, and maybe it comes home and eats dinner there, but it's kind of your cat-ish. And look, I obviously I've spent time in places like Paraguay and South America and places like that, and the pet industry there is kind of how it was in the UK and US maybe 30, 35 years ago. But we're seeing those changes even in those markets where there's increasing humanization. People are looking more and more for better quality products, more targeted solutions as that humanization process is happening even in the developing world. So
I would agree. Like a lot of the innovation that I've read about and seen even over the last 10 years has been new formats, new philosophies around nutrition, new philosophies around pet care. But I think to your point, a lot of that is fueled by just our access to information, and the barrier to entry for this market is so low now because, if you have a great idea and you're able to pull that idea off, you can just make a TikTok account and it can go crazy if you have the right strategy, of course. But I was talking to somebody yesterday and they were in the 70s, if I wanted to become a rock star, I'd have to, go through a studio and produce an EP and go through all these different gates. And these days you can just get on TikTok and start singing. And if you're good enough, if you have the right strategy or the right audience, then you can make it, right?
100%. Look, I mean, look at the podcast space. I mean, we're obviously talking on the podcast, and my podcast does extremely well. And I'm not quite sure why. I didn't need a podcast network behind me. I just created content, put it out, gave it to people. People liked it. They shared it. They moved it on, and it keeps moving, And I think that's just the way the world is now, is that actually a lot of the things which we needed years ago are now redundant or don't make sense in the same way they did. And look, even products. I mean, historically, if you didn't have a distributor, how the hell are you going to sell your products into the market? But we've got D2C, we've got Amazon, we've got eBay, we've got TikTok Shop. There's all these different platforms now where we can actually, you can build a brand just on TikTok Shop. You can build $1 million a year brand just selling on TikTok Shop. I mean, it's that crazy. And look, that it's great because again, what we're doing is we're tapping into people's orbit, and at the same time, we don't actually have to pay the gatekeepers anymore to do that. And I think that's a fantastic thing. I mean, look, it makes things tough. There's a different level of competition now.
Yeah.
When I think back to how when I was distributing, I feel like I was a bit of a gatekeeper 25 years ago, and that I had tremendous power. But for me, I was more obsessed with bringing new products to market, whereas I know a lot of my competitors where they struggled is that they bullied brands. Whereas now brands can't be bullied in the same way anymore because they don't need you. We don't need Chewy. We don't need Petco. We don't need PetSmart. We can, get a good business off the ground without those people. It's a very different world we're living in.
That's a good way to put it. It's just the paradigm has shifted, the paradigm of power around the industry, who holds the power. And I would argue too that we can forget about the consumer. Because we're so inundated just being in the industry and thinking about operations and pricing and supply chain and stuff like that. But I would argue the consumer has a lot of power these days too, just because they have more of a voice and, cancel culture, if you will, all of that.
But also look, consumers, and I talk about this a lot, is that consumers are very different now because what they strive for now is authority and authenticity. And if you're a pet shop in a town and you sell hamsters and budgie food and...
Okay, for those of us who are uncultured in the wonderful world of British English, because I had to look these up, I'm not going to lie, when Clayton says budgie feed, he means bird feed. specifically for parakeets, which are popular pet birds in both Europe and America. They just call them budgies. In just a minute, he'll refer to sand sheets, which also refer to the lining often found inside bird cages for said budgies. The more you know.
All this other, like, loads and loads and loads of products, like, from like spanning the range. Do you hold that authenticity anymore? Because again, we can buy all this stuff online. When we go in bricks and mortar, we're looking for people who really get it. This is why in the UK we have like a massive rise in raw stores. In the US, you've got apothecaries, and these are people who are stocking a wide range of very specialist products. But they're not trying to sell you budgie seat and sand sheets. They're saying to you, look, if you've got a yeast problem with your dog, if you've got, let's say, bone damage or ligament damage, there's all these great products which wouldn't have made it into the market in the same way 25 years ago, because everyone had to be generalist. Whereas now we can be specialist and we can be focused and we can be niche and create authority around what we're doing. And I think it's just a very, very different landscape. And again, there's a lot of people from the past who just haven't quite got on that train yet because they're scared of losing a sale.
That's like so true, yeah. So many people in the industry try to be everything to everyone, or at the very least too many things to too many people. And it's like there are so many niches to your point. Pick one, pick one and do it really, really well, and they will come.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, so one thing I talk to brands about a lot. So when I was consulting, is that like when it comes to USP delivery, so unique selling point delivery, have one. Don't have five. I mean, your product might do five, but I don't care. Choose one, because the problem is, and this is why multivitamins struggle, because what does it do? Well, people buy reactively, not proactively. They part with money for problem solutions. So you're hungry, you buy food. You don't take a paracetamol today in case you got a headache tomorrow. Yeah. You don't go and get cough medicine today if you haven't got a cough, just in case. You buy reactively. If I've got a product that does 5 things, I'm just going to assume they don't do any of them particularly well. But if I say to you, look, this is a product for dental health. Let's say it's a seaweed product and it's for dental health. But seaweed also is great for skin, it's great for coat, it's got lots of other added benefits. But if you start talking about those benefits, what you're doing is you're watering down your offering. That's not to say that people won't buy your product, like come to your business or buy your products for other reasons. But that driving force has to be leaned into so effectively.
Yeah, it's like, in order to attract the right consumer and to retain that right consumer, be super focused and targeted with what that offering is and what problem that's solving for that particular consumer. And then once you have that consumer and they're loyal to you and they understand that this product works for this problem that they're trying to solve, continuing that education into, okay, but did you also know that your pet might be benefiting from this? Like, that's just a value add at that point. But if you do it the wrong way, it becomes too complicated and turns people off.
You just have to, I always put myself in the mind of the consumer. If I've got a cough, do I want a cough medicine that also is great for my, hair follicles and nails and I don't know what else, or great for my knees or something? I don't want that. I want a cough medicine. I want to get rid of this cough. And again, you see it in a lot of let's say service industries. So for example, like dog trainers, they just go crazy about, I'm force free, or sustainability, I'm sustainable. This doesn't solve problems. Like, sustainability is great, but put it down the list.
Yeah.
Don't promote. That's not your cutting edge. The market for people who just want something sustainable. People want something that works first.
Yep.
And then they want it to be sustainable second or third on the list. And it's good to have it maybe in the corner and say, look, we're a sustainable company, blah, blah, blah. And then they can fall into your ethics. But product's got to work first, and it's got to be very focused. So it's like, nobody ever walks into a pet store and goes, what's your most sustainable dog food? Like, no one ever has said that. And yet I've seen brands, and that's been their edge. We're a sustainable dog food company. Great. But does it do the job you need it to do? It's about focusing in on what you do really, really well, leaning into it, but making sure it's an actual real problem that you're solving. Because if you're not solving a real problem, why would somebody be driven to buy that product?
I think people are really starting to come around that and coming out on the other side and focusing more on health benefits and problem solution statements. But the novel protein sector of the industry, it's so important, right? It's important that we explore these things. But I think where a lot of companies have maybe gotten it wrong in the early days was, yeah, sustainability, and that's our claim to fame, and that's why everybody's going to love us. And it's like, actually, there's probably a couple other priorities in there, right?
So I like, obviously I've been involved in the insect industry, and like I've worked with like insect-based dog food companies. And again, their whole drive was initially sustainable, hypoallergenic. So two terms no one actually like cares about. But really, where is the benefit of black soldier fly? It's high in lauric acid, 40 times more than normal, which is great for immune system, etc., etc. These are the sort of things which you can play on. So you can call it an immune boost dog food, and then that then makes more sense than hypoallergenic, because what even does that mean? It's like a nonsense term.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
No, and like, when you're in the pet store choosing your brand of dog food, you're going to have something very focused in your mind as to what you want to buy. So focus on that, because the truth is that you're looking at a wall of dog food. You have to make a decision. So your decisions are going to be governed by what screams to you as being the most important to solve your problem.
Yeah, totally. So I want to kind of come back to something you said earlier. You mentioned you help UK brands get into the US and vice versa. And I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on what is coming out of the UK that is really resonating with US consumers, and what's coming out of the US that's really resonating with UK consumers.
So I think both markets do things like well. So I think where the UK really gets it right for the US is that they're very straightforward, low ingredient list products. If you look at the back of a packet, and this is my criticism of US companies, you look at the back of a packet of a product, and the list is as long as your arm, and you don't even know what's in there, to be honest. It's not great for the consumer. And where people are a lot more educated on looking at ingredients, on looking at what's in the product, the US has fallen a little bit behind on that side of it against the UK. So the UK is very good at creating very good functional products, which are very simple, low ingredients, and very good in the holistic market as well. I think where America is very strong is they've got very strong ability around certain processes. So their freeze-dry processing and their ability, they're so far ahead of Europe on this stuff. They've been playing with it a lot longer, so they're a lot more developed. The truth is as well is that innovation can come from anywhere. It's not even that one particular sector sometimes is better than the other. It's just that there can be someone with a great idea in one market, brings it to market, and that can go anywhere. And it's just really, all I do is I just try and facilitate that movement across, because when people in the UK look at getting into the US, it just seems like this enormous behemoth to try and tackle. And then same thing with the US and Canadian brands coming into the UK and Europe. They look at all the languages and they look at the structure. It's because structurally Europe is very different to the US. And so it's really just helping people navigate those waters. And because a good product is a good product and will sell anywhere. It really, all I try and do is help people understand the market they're looking at.
Yeah, there's so much nuance, and the consumer never sees any of that. Hardly, but it's still there.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to say goodbye. This has been really great, really illuminating. But before we wrap up today, I'd love to hear about your 5 dogs. 5 dogs is a lot of dogs, right? But it's the pet industry. We all love pets. That's kind of the whole reason we're here. So tell me about your fur babies.
So I have 4 Eurasias and I have a Chungdong Hound. So Eurasias they're over here. They're in the US. They're a German breed, which are a mixture of a Chow Chow and a Keesund. And my dogs are all getting old now. My oldest one's 15. Got 15, 11, 10, 8 and 4 of my 5 dogs. And they're just my babies, to be honest. They're I love them more than my kids, for sure.
On the record.
Yeah, no, it's not even close. I openly say that to my kids too, because my kids don't wake me up with kissing my face. So it's like.
I mean that they drive a hard bargain.
Exactly, and they cost me a lot less as well.
That wraps up our conversation with Clayton Payne of the Pet Business Disruptors podcast. But we've included a link to his podcast in the show notes for this episode if you'd like to go check him out. I really think he gave us A pretty clear breakdown on why brands need to stay close to their consumers. Choose a lane, right? And solve a real problem if they want staying power. His takes on authenticity and the shifting power dynamics in the pet industry were definitely on point. And if you're enjoying these candid conversations from SUPERZOO 2025, be sure to check out our other episodes from the SUPERZOO show floor, which are all linked in today's show notes. They include our chat with Daniel Shuloff about carbohydrates in pet food and why pet owners shouldn't believe everything that they read, as well as our conversation with Indie Pet, who's championing independent pet retail stores, and the incredible teams behind several emerging brands in pet. And if you missed our chat with Dash and Lily, definitely cue that one up next to hear their origin story, from humble dog owners to widely loved pet influencers. And because we like to keep things festive, we've got 2 holiday specials dropping soon, one on Christmas Eve and one on New Year's Eve. Perfect for when you need a little break from the family chaos and want to hide in a quiet room with your headphones and a plate of cookies. It's okay. We've all been there. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Barking Mad. If you want to learn more about BSM Partners, please visit us at www.bsmpartners.net. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite leading podcast platform and share this episode with a friend to stay current on the latest pet industry trends and conversations. We'd also like to thank our dedicated team, Adamiette Thomas, Mealy Bowden, Kate Wright, Katie Wolf, and Dr. Katie Miller. A special shout out to Leanne Haggerty and Michael Johnson in support of this episode, and to David Perez for our original music in the intro and outro. See you next time.